viewers. What narcissism is a degenerative, inherent mindset. In other words, the mind cannot hang on to what it's declared and demonstrated that it loves. It deteriorates. If you take this fire, for instance, in an hour's time, will have deteriorated. The fire's burning, but no matter how hard that wood tries to stay in place, it's going to be consumed. And that's how narcissism works. Somebody comes along, their fire's burning, but their core inherent nature will be unable to keep the fan's flame. Now, there can be 1,000 different psychological reasons for this, and causes and things that happen to people in life, but the basic fundamental nature of narcissism is to degenerate that which it has declared and is declaring that it's willing to contribute to. And many of us have experienced this at levels where we've kept putting wood on the fire to try and keep it burning, but it was wood that we weren't supposed to put on. In other words, we'll put our wood into somebody else's diminishment to try and keep their fire burning, but that's not how it works. We're all responsible to keep things burning and growing and living and resolved and all the rest of it individually. But what happens is, and this is the problem, while you think you're keeping somebody else's fire burning by your contributions, and we've all heard the word taken for granted, that's all that narcissism does. It'll keep consuming. And it'll consume and consume and consume until somebody has a breakdown. And don't forget, in consumption, you can overconsume and have a breakdown in selfishness and all the rest of it. That's how narcissism works. And the sinful human nature that we all have, and we're affected by at different levels and at different times and under different life conditions, the way in which we suffer from it and the consequential to it, and how we make bad decisions or are able enough to be aware of when our narcissism or sinful nature is beginning to lead us in the wrong direction. There's nothing, looking at it from the man's point of view, a man can do when a woman's gone past the love bomb stage, the shiny new toy, she sees her reflection in you and all the rest of it. Once that fantasy wears off and you're not aware of it, if you're staying in the relationship and you think you're, really producing something fantastic by way of how you feel, you're no different to a wet piece of wood to her. You could be thinking, I'm turning up and this is all grand, and all she's seeing is a thud, like a tongue in a mouth trying to soothe an ulcer. It's just not going to fix. You cannot fix female nature, the archetype of it, which is to survive. It's hypergamous. And when the hypergamy, or let's just say the archetype of female nature, kicks in and you're not seen as any value anymore, it's not going to matter. It's just not going to matter how you try, how you run around. You can turn up with a bunch of flowers and all she's going to see is a bramble bush. You can turn up with your outfit on, looking dandy and all the rest of it, and think you're top notch, and all she sees is a thug. You can take her out to dinner and spend lots of money on her and think you're winning back the relationship, but she may as well be sitting down at the homeless shelter eating baked beans and bacon and an egg. When the female nature kicks in, there is nothing that you're going to be able to do except recognize that it's over and leave. Okay? 1 minute you're the wood in her life that's producing her fire. The next minute, no matter how hard you try, you're the water that's putting that fire out. And I know many of you have experienced this, be it male or female, where you haven't changed, you haven't diminished, you haven't done anything moral that would justify somebody diminishing your value and worth intimately in their life. But covert female narcissism doesn't care about any of that. It just follows its own lead. And if you can't recognize that, if you can't recognize that your time's up, the sand in the hourglass for this person has run out for you, if you're, by way of your devotion and commitment and loyalty to this person, have become too blind to see that you're of no value anymore, at least in that she'll say you're the best thing that has ever happened to her, and she couldn't ask for anything more, but yet she's going to throw you under the bus. That's because deep inside you've become boring. She's not entertained by you anymore. She really doesn't want to be touched by you anymore. She wants to either be left alone or find somebody else. Could be worse than that. It could be that she's found somebody else. Hasn't crossed the bridge yet, but with you on the way, it's a bit of a conscience issue. Eventually it's going to happen anyway. But you need to have the discernment to realize that when a woman goes into her sinfulness and all the cunning and wiles and ways in which they navigate that, you'll be left on the outside. You're not going to know any of this. She could be texting, talking, speaking to other people when you're not around. And you'll be getting thrown under the bus. As I said, you think you're the bus driver, but really you're not. You're under the bus. You can portray yourself however you like, but it'll be the opposite. You might think you're the sauce on the pie, but you are not. You're the sauce that dripped onto the footpath or onto the table. You are not as valuable as you think, and you're pushing for something, for somebody that doesn't want you anymore. Now they'll hang around for their convenience and for supply. They'll burn you up, but you're not the fire. You're not keeping that fire burning. You may think that. You might say to yourself, how are they going to go on without me? The same way they did before you come along. These people just use you for supply. There's no point following them around and allowing them to have influence in your life, because you're going to end up like this fire will be by morning, just embers and coals. In the big picture of it all, it's the same for all of us. But you're better off spending your time with somebody that's going to completely and utterly invest in you, as you're trying to do. Leave the narcissist, let them burn up somebody else's time. You've realized that you're not as valuable as you thought you were. You're not being treated anywhere near that. There's somebody else out there that will pack up your stuff or kick her out the door, or him, go no contact, and never, ever, ever go back.